This may not be the same Clemson team from years past. They were able to do just enough tonight against Syracuse inside the Dome, winning 17-14 over the Orange. And we got it all breaking down for you right here, right now. Myself, Leo Silverman, and Danny Tower in the Citrus TV studio, talking about the 3-4 Syracuse Orange. Well, Sam Lebowitz joining us live inside the Dome as well. It's midnight here in Syracuse. Orange Press Pass starts right now. Hello and welcome into the Citrus TV studio. I'm Tyler Melito. That's Leo Silverman. That's Danny Tao. Welcome into Orange. Syracuse falls 17-14 against Clemson today. And guys, it was a roller coaster of a game. Syracuse nearly pulling off the comeback, and I guess the pseudo upset, but they don't. They're now 3-4 on the year, 0-3 in ACC play. What are your first impressions?
Well, Tyler, my first impression is simply Dino Babers was masterfully outcoached this game. Dabo Swinney and his crew just had him on lock and had his number the entire game. Listen, they game planned very well around Garrett Schrader. He had basically virtually no rushing yards, just 6 in the game after having 150 against Wake Forest. Perfect game plan containing him. And then you move to second half. He made some second half changes. Sean Tucker just had not as much of an impact in that second half, and that comes down to the coaching. So for me, it's all about Dino Babers getting outcoached.
Yeah, and I agree. It's about the coaching. This is just another game that Cuse should have won. They're now 0-3 in their last 3 games, and they've lost all 3 by 3 points. That comes back to the mentality of the team, and I'm going to touch on this a little bit later, but teams shouldn't be losing consecutive close games like this. At a certain point, it mathematically at least, should be evening out. So that goes back to the coaching for me. That's something that this team needs to fix.
It's really like Bill Murray's Groundhog's Day. Losing by 3 to Florida State, losing by 3 to Wake Forest, and losing by 3 to Clemson. But let's see how it all went down inside the Dome for the Orange. And starting things off, there's the family of Floyd Little. He was honored at halftime. More on that later. Let's get to the guy who everyone thinks should be the next 44, and Sean Tucker, Leo, with his 54-yard run.
Yeah, I mean, this guy was completely masterful in the first half. He had guys missing left, right, and center, Tyler.
Yeah, unfortunately for the Orange, though, that run would not lead to a touchdown, Danny, as Garrett Schrader throwing the ill-advised INT in the red zone.
I mean, that's just a bad pass. You got to make a better decision as a quarterback. You got a scoring chance. Can't throw that ball.
It was 0-0 after 1, but Joseph Ngata, what a catch here. Able to get the foot down, puts the Tigers on the board first, 7-0. And then Sean Tucker, phenomenal first half, 132 yards on the ground against that #1 ACC run defense. And that would set up the touchdown for Garrett Schrader from a few yards out. So 7-7. But Leo, 4th down late here in this first half. Clemson runs a big punt.
You just got to go back to that coaching. They had Syracuse sleeping. What a catch there that leads to a score to put them up at the half, Tyler.
Yep, that would set up Kobe Pace for the 2-yard score, 14-7. There's the ceremony honoring Floyd Little, passed away on January 1st of this year. Rest in peace, number 44. It was really a sad loss. But on to the second half. Clemson able to get a field goal here and make it 17-7. And Syracuse, it seemed like all hopes were lost, Danny, until Trevor Pena with arguably the play of the game.
Yeah, I mean, Syracuse needed someone to step up. They don't have any Taj Harris anymore to make a play in the passing game. Trevor Pena stepping up. He wants to be that guy.
62-yard score, but Andre Schmidt, the bad play of the game, I guess, misses it wide left, and it's a shame we don't have another angle of it because you saw the replay on the television. The laces were not in the right spot. Syracuse falls 17-14, guys. It's just a deja vu, as you mentioned, another 3-point loss.
Yeah, another 3-point loss, more miscues with penalties and late game clock management. It's just so tough to keep watching this happen.
Yeah, it's the same story on a different day. Schrader plays okay, maybe just well enough to win. Sean Tucker carries the load offensively, and they just don't have enough to get it done in the end.
And on a day where DJ Uiagalelei for Clemson did not have his best stuff, it sucks for the Orange not to be able to get the win. But we are now joined by my good friend and yours as well, Sam Lebowitz, live inside the Dome for the second straight week. And Sam, compared to last week to this week, Garrett Schrader running the football, it was night and day. What was your assessment of QB1 and his game play on the ground?
Tyler, it's a tale of two football teams when you're comparing last week versus this week, especially in the rush game for Garrett Schrader. Wake Forest is the better football team between them and Clemson, but their biggest issue perhaps is the rush defense, whereas Clemson, where they've struggled offensively this year, they've been very good with rush defense, and it shows in the box score. Garrett Schrader had 10 rushing yards this game against Clemson, whereas in the past 2 weeks combined, he had 350, 178 yards last week against Wake Forest. I said it last week, when there's no reliable pass offense, teams are going to know what to expect. And when you already have a good rush defense like Clemson does, they're going to read you like a book. They completely quieted down Schrader's rush game, and I think that played perhaps as big a dividend as anything in this loss for Syracuse.
Sam looking sharp as ever. I've got to ask, with nearly 7,000 students in the student section today, how was the atmosphere in the Dome, especially with that crazy weather pregame?
Well, Leo, it was quite frankly bonkers inside the Dome. I mean, I've been in the Dome many games, both as a student and as a reporter, and I don't think I've ever heard it as loud as it was tonight. It was deafening at points tonight. And yeah, I think the weather did play a role. I think that because of the impending doom of the storm that was coming in, a lot of fans did come a little bit earlier. They saw the forecast. They were like, we better get in the Dome as soon as we can, find cover, find good seats. Clemson is a game that people circle on their calendars. They want to come to this game. They want to see Clemson football, and I think it showed. You mentioned nearly 7,000 fans in the student section. That's a lot of fans, and there were a lot of fans all around the stadium too. They didn't leave, in this game really until after that last field goal missed. It was so loud at points in this Dome that I could barely hear myself think, much less hear what Ben Spector next to me in the press box had to say.
Yes, Sam, the last couple games for Syracuse, it seems like the offense has shouldered the burden of keeping this team in the game. Tonight, the defense did the job, and you got to tell me, what happened that let the defense keep Syracuse close?
Well, you talk about this defense, you have to talk about Mikel Jones. I know he was named the captain of this defense this week. He's the heartbeat of this defense, and yes, he did lead the team in tackles tonight, but it doesn't matter what kind of impact he has in terms of the box score because he has his fingertips involved in every play, in every big defensive stop for Syracuse. He's the heartbeat of this defense. And in terms of the defense in general and why they played so well in the second half, Jones said post-game himself, he said that they played that well because they needed to. Think about in baseball, when you have a back-end rotation starter going against an ace, that back-end rotation starter is going to pitch as well as he's ever pitched in his life because he knows he needs to keep his team in the game. Syracuse wasn't scoring much tonight. The defense knew they needed to step up. They elevated their play, and they kept Syracuse in this game late.
Sam Lebowitz, thank you so much. Now go to bed. I bet you're really tired for all that. Thank you so much for your great job, Sam. Coming up after this quick break here on Orange Press Pass, we'll hear a little bit from what Dino Babers had to say in his post-game press conference. We'll talk a little Sean Tucker and maybe one of the biggest surprises of this early season. Stay with us right here on OTN.
You've messed up your son's haircut.
Mom?
Do you A, try to fix it,
Like it never happened.
B, work with what you got, or C, show solidarity?
Thank you, baby.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Welcome back to the Orange Press Pass. I'm Tyler Melito, and post-game, Dino Babers addressed the Syracuse's 17-14 loss to the media, and here is what he had to say. You're kicking to play in overtime. If you go for it and don't make it, it's crazy. You don't want to end on that. That is courtesy of Z89 Sports, and he's, of course, talking about the 48-yard field goal Andre Schmidt had to possibly tie the game on 4th and 1, possibly winning it. Leo Silverman, Danny Tao. Guys, I want to get your thoughts on that. Do you think Dino made the right call in kicking the field goal?
Well, 48-yarder is a big field goal, but if you look at the time issue there, Dino put them in a situation where, in my opinion, yes, they had to kick that ball.
Yeah, I agree, and we're going to touch on this more later, but I think it's the right call. You go for the tie. You don't take the chance where if you don't get that score, you're done. You lose the game. So I think it's the right call.
And mind you, Andre Schmidt, Lou Groza Award winner in 2018, it was a bad hold. It wasn't necessarily Andre Schmidt's fault. The guy has had an up and down season, but he is still very talented. But the decision to not go for it on 4th and 1 and possibly win the game instead of playing for overtime, that has been a common theme all season amongst Syracuse fans and media members complaining about Dino Babers not really having the courage to go for it, the decision-making all season. What has your guys' assessment been on that for Dino Babers?
Well, for me, I mean, we go to this game, we talk about the 4th and 1, I alluded to it a little bit before, but the time issues, I mean, you have the ball under a minute, 4th and 1, and you call a timeout? I don't understand that. That's your last timeout in the game. That 4th and 1, you could have easily rushed to the line. You should have had a 4th down play ready, a Garrett Shader sneak, and either one of two things happen. You catch the Clemson defense off guard, and you get that 1st down, and you can play for a better field goal or for the win, or Dabo takes a timeout, and you get a free time to assess your team. So I just have issue with the time management mostly, Danny.
I mean, yeah, and they were lucky to even be in that position on the final drive. I mean, you look at it, and they needed multiple long 3rd down conversions on the final drive alone just to get into field goal range, Leo. So, you know, given that he's going to take a timeout on 4th and 1, I don't really hate the call to kick the field goal, especially, you know, I don't hate the use of the timeout either if you're going to set up a play. Maybe if you're going for it on 4th and 1, I like that a little more. But overall, it was definitely a little bit questionable.
Definitely questionable, especially given last week, too, all that happened. But 4th and 1, you have Sean Tucker in your backfield for Dino Babers. And not giving him the rock is an odd choice. Sean Tucker, phenomenal game once again. Was kind of slow in the second half, but we mentioned he had 132 yards on the ground in the first half. Is Sean Tucker like the best thing ever? In your opinion?
I think it is. I mean, I think this was Sean Tucker's best game of the year, to be completely honest. I mean, he goes for 157 yards on the ground. That's his 2nd most rushing yards this year. And he did it on only 22 attempts. That's the 2nd least he's had all year. Sean Tucker, and you know, when he had these great numbers earlier this year, it's against a team like Albany, nowhere near the quality of a team like Clemson. So to put up these numbers against as good of a defense, especially as good of a run defense as a team like Clemson has, is just outstanding.
Yeah, there's only two things I really want to talk about with Sean Tucker here. Before you even get into the game, I want to make sure we mention this because this is really important. There are only 2 running backs in history to have 750 yards on the ground, 200 receiving yards, and 10-plus touchdowns through 6 games. That would be Reggie Bush and Sean Tucker. So I don't really understand why Dino Babers leaned so far away from giving him the ball in the second half, even if you're losing by that much. Sean Tucker, though, just phenomenal once again.
A definite favorite for the Doak Walker Award for the best running back in college football. It's either him or Bijan Robinson from Texas, but we will see. A lot of time left. And the reason why Sean Tucker has had all this success, guys, so far, at least in my opinion, has to do with the offensive line. Must improve from a year ago. This is a unit, mind you, that allowed the 3rd most sacks in all of college football last season. And now Garrett Schrader and Sean Tucker have had some breathing room in their backfield.
100%, Tyler, and for me, it just comes down to the fact that this unit has had a lot more time under their belt. When you talk about that 2020 season, it was a lot of guys getting thrown into positions when they didn't have that much experience, and now they've had a full offseason under their belt. They had that season in 2020, and they've improved masterfully. So you talk about a lot of these guys becoming veterans for this team, and then you move further. Chris Leitch is probably the most important transfer. You know, he is the most important transfer over Garrett Schrader to me. Guy's been masterful at the guard position this year, so that's what it really comes down to with this better O-line play for me.
Yeah, and I like to take a look at the numbers. This is a team that so far has allowed 15 total sacks this year. Last year, this team had allowed 28 sacks at the same point of the season. That's a massive improvement, and I think obviously the play of the O-line itself is going to help there. But I think another big reason for that is just having Garrett Schrader at quarterback. You know, a player who's as mobile as he is, a player who can get outside the pocket like Schrader can, especially compared to someone like Tommy DeVito, is really going to help your O-line and maybe give them an extra second or two to hold up in pass protection and not give up a sack.
Not giving up a sack, very important. You know, games are won in the trenches, guys. And obviously we talked about the offensive line hasn't really necessarily gotten it done recently, but they've kept it close. The other side of the trenches, the defensive line, defensive front seven, has kept it very close. Danny, what are your thoughts on that?
You know, I think it's a team that's just playing well as a unit. You know, Sam mentioned that tonight Michael Jones was all over the field, 11 total tackles for the linebacker, but everyone else had, no one else had more than 5. So it's really a team that's playing together well, and everyone is contributing on that side of the ball.
Danny, I agree with you on that point, but everybody loves to talk about Michael Jones and Josh Black on this front seven. You know what? I'm going to talk about the Cody Roscoe breakout season. This guy got another sack against Clemson. That puts him up to 7.5 sacks on the season through 6 games and double-digit tackles for loss. This guy has been absolutely great in containment, and he's going to break out the rest of the season.
Cody Roscoe in line for a major breakout. Well, coming up after this break, Danny, Leo, and I are going to become doctors for a little bit. OPP MD after this break, so stay with us right here on Orange Press Pass.
Did you hear about the pony with a sore throat? He was a little horse. Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding. Why couldn't the Why was the basketball court all wet? Why? Because the players kept dribbling all over it. Where did cats go on vacation? New York.
There's one thing you can never have sex without.
It's not something you buy.
Or something you take.
In fact, there's only one way to get it.
It has to be given to you, freely.
It's consent.
Because sex without it isn't sex.
It's rape. Consent.
If you don't get it, you don't get it.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Fancy pants peanut butter? A big screen television? You haven't even bought a sofa yet. A motorcycle? When your father finds out, he's gonna flip his shoes with 2 buckles? What do you even need 2 buckles for? Mr. Big Shot, buying whiskey shots for everybody in the bar. From the looks of it, I'd say nobody even remembers. Feed the pig.
Welcome back to the Orange Press Pass. I'm Tyler Melito, Leo Silverman, and Danny Tao. And guys, post-game, Garrett Schrader addressed the media following Syracuse's 17-14 loss to Clemson. And here is what he had to say. Disappointed is an understatement. There are no moral victories. We need to get better. We are right there. We look up in the fourth quarter, and we have a chance to win. We need to be better. And Danny, we've mentioned this already in the show. This is the 3rd straight loss for Syracuse in the ACC, and 3rd straight loss by 3 points.
You know, and you're right, but he says there's no moral victories. I think there is a little bit of a moral victory to be taken from this game. You know, this isn't like last year where the team is, getting blown out in all these games. They're keeping it close and they're playing better than they were a year ago. So as a whole, obviously you're not winning the game and that's disappointing, but there is improvement to be had.
100%. There's definitely improvement to be had. I do kind of treat that as kind of like the cookie cutter answer. When you lose, you got to be better. But I appreciate the sentiment nonetheless.
And guys, this is a team that very well could be a 1-loss team, maybe undefeated if a few things go their way. They have lost by 3 points in all their ACC games, and they lost barely to Rutgers in week 2. But let's fix some of those issues. There have been a lot of things so far that us as media members and all of Syracuse fandom have had issues with so far. So it's time to play a little doctor, a little bit of OPP MD. So first things first, we got to talk about the passing game. It has been a much talked about issue. So Leo, what do you think is the cure for this passing game with 5 games remaining?
Tyler, I hope to prescribe a great cure for this, but for me, it's just let's prescribe Garrett Schrader some confidence. Listen, we all saw that the guy can throw the ball. You saw that 62-yard touchdown. That was a beautiful pass on the money. He needs some confidence. Maybe he's not a mobile, running, on-the-run gunslinger type of quarterback. Maybe he just needs to throw in the pocket, and if he's confident, things are going to work out a lot better for this passing offense. I'm not asking him to throw the ball 3 times a game. I'm just asking him to be confident on those 15 throws a game.
Yeah, and I agree with the sentiment of maybe throwing a little bit less, but what I'm going to prescribe for this offense is just a new playbook. You know, they're calling plays like Tommy DeVito is still the quarterback. This isn't a pure pocket passer. You've got a runner back there. You need to play to his strengths. Now, it reminds me of when Lamar Jackson took over as the Ravens quarterback a couple years ago. You change the playbook from a pass-first offense with Joe Flacco to a run-first offense with Lamar Jackson. Syracuse needs to do the same thing, play to their quarterback's strengths.
Don't make me take your doctor's license away for bringing up that Lamar Jackson.
You knew it was going to happen.
I don't know, the kid who's a Ravens fan, blah, 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 blah. Guys, there's a bigger issue at hand, at least in my eyes. The biggest issue so far has been the lack of discipline amongst Dino Babers' squad. The penalties have been atrocious, especially the big penalties, the tauntings, the pass interferences, the 15 yards or more penalties, guys.
100%. Oh, go ahead, Danny.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Leo. And I'm going to prescribe a solution here. Actually, for Tyler, Leo, me, and the rest of the fan base, I'm prescribing some perspective for Syracuse fans. Because these penalties, you know, obviously not ideal, but they're getting better at this. Their penalties are down about 8 yards per game from where they were last year. They're down about 18 yards per game from where they were 2 years ago. So they're getting better with Dino Babers as their coach year on year at these penalties, and obviously it's not ideal, but I think this team has much bigger issues that they need to focus on.
Danny, I understand that it's not ideal, but I still have to prescribe. Tyler, you said it best, more discipline. This team, listen, penalties, undeniably, we can all agree, are the easiest thing to fix on a football team. It's just simply that. And in 3 games in a row where you've lost by 3, penalties like this are got to factor into somewhat. I'm even willing to say that this team could be 5-2 or 4-3 if these penalties were fixed up a lot more than they are currently.
You mentioned the numbers. It very well could be, yeah, there might not be committing as big of penalties in terms of the numbers, but the timeliness of some of these penalties. You saw it tonight as well. There are some penalties that are just like, what are you doing, Syracuse? One play where the running back got out of bounds at Clemson and the Syracuse defender just shoved him basically while he was already on the bench. It was just dumb, in my opinion. One last topic for you two, and this is kind of where it's a make or break for you two to keep your licenses and your practices of medicine, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Third down, the money down. Syracuse atrocious today. What do you prescribe to get better on that going forward, Dan?
Tyler, hopefully you like this so I can keep my medical
I hope
license.
so.
I'm prescribing loosen up the play calling on third down specifically. We keep talking about the play calling, but I want to focus on third downs. Listen, it is an undeniable fact that Sean Tucker is the offense here and the most important piece of the offense. Don't be afraid to run the ball on third downs. I understand that at the collegiate and at the pro level, passing is becoming more and more of a thing, especially on third downs. But you can run the ball, especially with a running back like Sean Tucker. I guarantee the third down problems would be much, much better, around the maybe even 50%, Tyler, if they would just run the ball in 3rd and 5s, 3rd and 6s, 3rd and 4s.
Yeah, you're right, Leo. And, you know, I don't really have a prescription for this team just yet, but I can diagnose them with a case of impatience. Now, consider this. Against Clemson tonight, Syracuse only had 2 third down plays with 5 yards or less to go. That came on their first drive of the game and their last drive of the game. That is just unacceptable for a Power 5 football team. You need to get in 3rd and short, 3rd and manageable, where you can make a play and make it easier for your offense to convert and get that first down.
Well, only time will tell if Syracuse can fix some of these problems. Great job on you two. I'm going to let you guys become a doctor and keep your practice. But we're running out of time. We got about 5 minutes left in the show. So coming up after this quick break, Leo and Danny are going to get their final thoughts from Syracuse's loss. Stay with us.
Taking care of a family member can lead to plenty of questions. Fortunately, there's a place to get the answers, for them and for you. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place. The Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back to Orange Press Pass. I'm Tyler Melito, Leo Silverman, Danny Tao. We're running out of time here on the show from Syracuse's 17-14 loss to Clemson. Let's look around the ACC for this weekend. We got Syracuse already lost, Duke playing Virginia, Miami playing North Carolina, number 22 NC State. Guys, what are you guys looking at?
NC State's a good one, but Tyler, I'm looking at Miami, North Carolina. You got Sam Howell versus De'Aaron King. Those are two quarterbacks that came out hot, were expected to be good, were expected to be draft prospects. Facing off should be a great one down in North Carolina.
I gotta be honest, I'm not looking at any of those ACC games. The ACC just doesn't inspire me this year. I'm looking at some SEC games. I'm looking at some Big 12 games. Those are gonna be a lot more fun.
Texas, Oklahoma State, hook 'em horns. Longhorns gonna bounce back. Let's look at the standings in the ACC right now. Here is the Atlantic Division. Syracuse, dead last, guys. But Wake Forest, number 19 in the country, looking really solid.
Yeah, and like we've said a couple times tonight, Syracuse is a couple plays, a couple penalties away from maybe being at the top of these standings. So these are really fluid, and I expect them to change as the season keeps moving.
I definitely like the optimism from you there, Danny, but I don't know about that with Syracuse. They still have to take on NC State, and of course, they do have a matchup against Virginia Tech coming up, Tyler.
And we see the Coastal there as well. Pitt, Virginia Tech, who Syracuse will play a little bit later on. Anyone that's like jumping out for you two?
I mean, honestly, Pittsburgh has looked pretty good to me so far. Played a lot of close games, in my opinion.
No, I don't think anyone jumps out for me. I mean, this ACC just feels like the Pac-12 of years past. There's no one really inspiring at the top.
All right, well, next game for Syracuse, it will be next week against those Hokies of Virginia Tech. Let's keep it tight, guys, here. What does Syracuse need to do to beat Vatek?
They need to make sure to cancel out the crowd noise. Hokies is a hard team to play against at home.
Yeah, and Virginia Tech is just average everywhere. I think if Syracuse can be consistent, make the plays they need to make, they'll find a way to get a win.
That game will be down in Blacksburg, and you can watch Orange Press Pass at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time on October 23rd. We're running out of time, as mentioned in the show, so let's get to your final thoughts. Leo, I'll start with you.
Tyler, I mentioned it earlier, but this is simple. Fix the easy mistakes, Syracuse. Listen, you talk about the penalties are easy fix. Clock management also just such an easy fix. I'm going to keep harping on it over and over again because this is what's really hindering this team to me. You fix the penalties, you fix the clock management from Dino Babers. This team is in a situation for a bowl game, and if they want to stay in a situation for a bowl game, you got to fix it come next week against Vatek.
You know, I agree, Leo, that something needs to be fixed. In my opinion, that fix comes with the mentality. This team has lost 3 games in a row by exactly 3 points. That comes back to the coaching for me. This team doesn't know how to finish big games, and they need to learn from Dino Babers and company how to finish off when times are tough.
Guys, less than a minute in show. Syracuse 3-4. They need 6 to make it to a bowl game. Do they make it there?
I don't think so, Tyler. We haven't seen any indication that they're fixing the simple problems, and Danny mentioned there's a lot more problems on top of that. I don't see them making a bowl game.
You know, I'm an optimist, Leo. I think they do make a bowl game. I think they could already have 6 wins if the ball bounces a different way a couple times, and I think the ball is going to bounce a different way a couple times. They're going to get right to 6 wins on the dot.
It's going to be close. 5 games remaining. That means the Orange would have to go 3-2 in their final 5 games to make it to a bowl game. But that's all the time we have for you tonight on Orange Press Pass. For Danny Tao and Leo Silverman, I'm Tyler Melito. Thank you all so much for joining us. Syracuse loses to Clemson 17-14. Have a great night, and we'll see you next time here on Citrus TV.